The race is on.
Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Reverend Emily Carroll, and I bring you greetings from Green the Church on this afternoon. We are excited to be in this space together, excited for this time and for this podcast, The Race podcast. So we are excited here at Green the Church to offer this podcast, to offer this opportunity to have conversation about Black faith and ecological witness, this dynamic of being able to have conversations with entities throughout our nation who are working and serving and conscious of this space as it relates to our environment and how it works in tandem with our faith and with our willingness to be a witness and with our desire to be a witness unto Christ, to not only save souls and be concerned about the hereafter, but also to be concerned about life here on this beautiful green planet that God has given us. And so on this morning, as we begin this conversation, I do want to ask that you like and definitely share. And also in the comments, just drop a name or two of individuals that you feel would benefit and would appreciate a conversation that is soon to be on the way. The more people that are here, the more powerful the conversation will be. And so we're excited about this live opportunity as we continue to do the work of Christ and as we with Green the Church have this goal and this ambition to help our Black churches to go green. And so I want to start by way of introducing our panel on this morning. So I will begin with some short bios. And so on this morning, we're grateful to have with us Reverend Dr. Dwight Webster. Our first guest, he's a towering figure in both the theological scholarship and pastoral leadership, born in Philadelphia and now serving as the senior pastor at the historic Beth Eaton Baptist Church in Oakland, California. Reverend Dwight Webster has spent over 4 decades, I believe that's about 40 plus years, building bridges between faith and justice and the community. And so we're excited about him being present. He is the founding pastor and pastor emeritus of Christian Unity Baptist Church in New Orleans, Louisiana, a city where he's also led academic programs and launched social justice coalitions and mentored generations of clergy and activists. Dr. Webster holds degrees from Howard University, Colgate Rochester Divinity School, and a PhD from the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley. His ministry spans urban pulpits, academic lecture halls, and grassroots community organizing, all rooted in a Black theological tradition that calls for both personal salvation and systemic transformation. We all know in this work of doing God's work, and we talk about salvation. Yeah, we want to talk about salvation for your soul, but there is a desire that there is saving grace in God here on this planet. So today, welcome Reverend Dwight Webster. Amen, amen. And then also we have on today, Brother Dwight, just if you could just say greetings to everyone as I continue the introductions. We can't hear you, Pastor. There we go. So as he works on his audio, can we hear you, Dr. Webster? Okay, so we still can't hear you. As he works on his audio, I'll just continue introducing our other panelists. We also have.
Okay, how about that?
All right, that's perfect. We
You can hear
also
me?
have, yes, if you could just say hello to everyone.
Good morning, good afternoon or evening or wherever you are.
Amen. We also have Antonique Smith, our next guest. She's a powerful powerhouse of culture and voice and prophetic witness. Antonique Smith is an acclaimed actress, Grammy-nominated artist, and a globally recognized advocate for climate and environmental justice. She lit up Broadway in the iconic role of Mimi in Rent and became widely known for her role as Faith Evans in the hit film Notorious. But beyond that spotlight, Antonique has become a leading voice in the climate movement. We're grateful to have her literally singing for the Pope, speaking at the United Nations, and mobilizing faith communities of color to act boldly for people, not only act boldly for people and for our planet. And so we are excited on today. Sister Antonique is the co-founder and CEO of entity called Climate Revival, where she blends faith and art and activism into a compelling call for justice. There is this interconnectedness of them all. Please help me welcome Miss Antonique Smith. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here with us on today. And lastly, we have on today Reverend Hadari S. Williams, and he is a prophetic leader and deep thinker whose ministry blends this dynamic of liberation theology, psychology, and grassroots power building. Reverend Williams is the pastor of the New Life Presbyterian Church in South Fulton, Georgia. We got some Baptists in the house, some Presbyterian. I'm serving a United Methodist congregation, some non-denominational. I'm excited about this ecumenical conversation that we are going to have. His church is that in South Fulton Community Lifeline, an organization dedicated to community development, equity, and healing. With degrees in political science, theology, and community psychology, and a PhD candidate in indigenous and eco psychologies. Reverend Williams brings a holistic vision of what church can be, a place of healing, not only for the soul, but for neighborhoods, ecosystems, and future generations. He also directs the Thriving Prophetic Congregation initiative at the ITC, equipping a new generation of justice driven pastors, my alma mater. We're honored to welcome Reverend Hadari Williams to the show. Good afternoon, sir.
Grace and peace. Good to be with you all.
Amen, amen. And then also, I believe we have in the back room some co-hosts. My brother, that of Pastor Benjamin Carroll, Jr., pastor of the Greater Antioch Baptist Church in Florida area. And so we're excited to have him on today. And then also, I believe in the back room, or the backstage, they call it on StreamYard, we have Reverend Dr. Ambrose Carroll, founder of GTC. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Good afternoon, brothers.
Good afternoon. Let's go.
Amen. Amen. So, on this race, as we continue to move in this space, I wanted to open the floor with this conversation. We're going to talk about Black faith and ecological witness. And so, I wanted to ask, as we begin this dialogue with Reverend Dr. Dwight Webster, your ministry spans cities and decades and academic institutions. How did your theological formation, both personal and professional, shape your ecological consciousness? This is a whole lot of big words, but you got it. And so I know you'll break it down, the preacher par excellence that you are. But with all of what you've done in the past, how did it all shape your ecological consciousness? Dr. Webster, there we go.
Okay, there we go. First of all, again, greetings to all those who are on this esteemed panel, and to you, Reverend Carroll, praying for your continued work and success in New Orleans. The first thing that really hit me was growing up as the Sunday school kid, everybody is pretty much oriented to the Our Father, or what we would call the Lord's Prayer, and the 23rd Psalm. That's, if you're going to be a Christian, that's what you like. And I carried a little guilt because the 23rd Psalm was not my favorite Psalm. My favorite Psalm was the 24th Psalm. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. And then it goes on and on. And then as I continued to grow and try to develop, it became very clear to me that there was some responsibility that we had for the earth as stewards and managers. And that really became much clearer when I got to Colgate, Rochester, Bexley Hall, Crozer Theological Seminary in Rochester, New York, and had Old Testament and New Testament classes, and found out that there were two creation stories or iterations of creation in Genesis 1 and 2. And with the creation of humanity and the notion that one set of language talks about having dominion and the other set talks about stewardship. And I realized that there is no contradiction in that. It means responsibility. And from there on, I began to say, whoa, wait a minute. We're not just in it just to extract and things. And when I thought about earthquakes in diverse places, that wasn't just an apocalyptic thing. If you do a certain kind of drilling and excavating and mining and all kinds of, the earth is going to respond, because we're extracting and drawing out from an integrity and a continuity. And so that we're responsible for that. And obviously the carbon footprint and the ozone, I came up in the era of, we got a hole in the ozone that we're creating. And then my community work in 3 iterations, the Jeremiah group, post-Katrina work, and pandemic work. With the Jeremiah work, we had that established on Jeremiah 29:7. Almost everybody I heard, especially evangelicals, talk about, I know the plans I have for you, da 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 da. But 29:7 says, pray for the welfare of the city where I have sent you. And that notion, because in its welfare is shalom, you will find your own. And so I started realizing, well, there's the rural, the urban. We have responsibility for building houses, planting gardens, and all kinds of other things, as well as marrying one another. And then obviously, God said, I can show you better than I can tell you. I'm going to send a Cat 5 hurricane and come barreling out of the Gulf. And my wife was talking just today about how we just lost everything that we had. Some things that we wanted to pass on to our children, just gone. But we had to recover. And finally, with the pandemic, that it became very, very clear that we have to be responsible for this planet. And on the way, someone asked me to do an editorial letter about clean water. And in Flint, Michigan, and in Alabama, and some other places where folk can't even get clear running water. And these are systemic problems. This is not an act of God. This is an act of humanity. Let me stop.
No, I appreciate those comments, because there's a recollection that things are interconnected. When you talked about drilling and how when you drill in the land, you're in essence disturbing. We're supposed to work in unity and in tandem. So there's going to be a cause and effect, not only to the land, but God's people also, because we're all, one. Sister Smith, as an artist and an activist, you've been called the voice of the movement. How has your faith informed your environmental work? Similar question. And how do you see your cultural platform as a part or a place in ministry? Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Webster was preaching
Yes.
this afternoon. No, I love it. I love it. I agree with everything he said. So my faith, God created this beautiful earth. He created us. He made us stewards over it. We all have a responsibility as people of faith to take care of his creation. I got to spend some time, like some real crazy time in his creation a couple of weeks ago. I went on my first camping trip Black people don't usually be camping. But we went up to Oregon, and it was a climate thing, actually.
Yeah.
It was life changing, honestly, to just be under the stars that God created, just a sky full of stars at night. It's my first time in a tent. It was my first time on the river. I was on the Rogue River. Um, the first I wasn't scared. I was in a boat with people, and then by the end of the trip, I was kayaking by myself on the rough waters. I literally really got in touch with the beauty, and I've appreciated. I've always appreciated. I love flowers and all that kind of stuff, but really just never spent time like that in nature. And God's creation is just so beautiful. What we've been given is just so incredible, and it's very sad that there's a large amount of people who not only don't care about God's creation, um, they're they're hurting. And I love something that Dr. Webster said. He said, the extraction and the reaction from the earth, like it made me think of how I am as a human being, just to get blood taken. Like I want my mom to come, I want a lollipop, like the little needle, my reaction to that. And so if you think about what's being done to the earth, it's a living, breathing entity. It's as alive as we are. And I think people ignore the fact that it's living and breathing just like us. And when you hurt, like just how when somebody does something to us and we're hurt, the reaction that happens to our body, or even when, like right now, I actually have a little bit of a cold. My body is going through some stuff in there trying to fight that. So what we're doing to the earth is causing the earth to have some reactions that is like, I got to work through this because this is not good for me. And people really don't understand that there's been other things here that aren't here anymore. And that could be us. And I personally would love to stay on the earth. And so, yeah, I think as people of faith, it's on us, especially at this point now where we are and how far we've taken the earth in a place where it's clearly not, it's not a good place. We've hurt it. We've gotten to a place where the earth is definitely hurt. And we can see it in all of the crazy weather patterns. They're not natural disasters. It's fully unnatural. It's definitely caused by everything that we're doing, which is why during COVID, when everybody was at home, couldn't be out, all of a sudden things started getting a little bit better. And so, we do not want the earth to be like, something, when man wasn't really here. I was doing bad. So get them out of here. We do not want that. So I think people of faith need to be the ones in the forefront of this movement. Honestly, also, we've been in the forefront of so many movements. All the ones that we've won in the past, we've been in the forefront. And it's unbelievable that we are not leading in this one. This is, I think, maybe the most important one because it's literally our existence on earth is in jeopardy. And so I think people of faith need to be in the forefront of them. People of faith and people of color, which we all are. Like we on this Zoom need to be leading in this movement because it's our people that are suffering the first and the worst from everything that's happening. It's our people that are dying from the pollution that's causing climate change. And so I think for sure, people of faith and people of color, and that's what climate revival is about. We're trying to mobilize people of faith and people of color because we have to get out in front of this thing, and we have to make sure that we honor what God has given us because it helps us. It's honestly a pretty selfish movement. It's not just about Mother Earth. It's about us too, because if we don't take care of the earth, then we're not going to be taken care of on the earth. And so you said my platform. So my platform's been a blessing. And I honestly think anybody who's an artist, an actor, or anything like that in the arts, who has a following, I think should stand up for the things that they believe in. I don't think every song or every movie or every TV show you do has to be that. I don't think, I don't think your whole catalog of music has to be climate songs. But I do believe that people should know what's important to you. And I think that also should be reflected in your art, at least occasionally. So that's why this year I put out a song called Love Song to the Earth. But I've been singing in the movement for 11 years now. Like my whole time in the movement has been about using my voice to help inspire people, to help move people. We have hearts to change. We have a whole world
Yeah.
of hearts to change. And that goes from, telling people about Jesus all the way to telling people that we need to take care of this creation so that we're going to be good on this planet. So yeah, so I think faith and the culture piece is everything. It's everything.
It is. And the beautiful thing about it is, right now we have represented on this call California, Georgia, Louisiana, and Florida. There are
And
6 of us
Jersey.
on this, and Jersey.
In
See,
Jersey right now.
you're in Jersey. And so what I'm saying by that is that the leadership of Black folks in this environmental space, it is happening. It might seem like a silo because we're in these different states and there are not a lot of us doing the work, but Black folks are leading in this space.
Absolutely.
The prayer is that we just allow it to expand even more. So, Dr. Soon to be Dr. Hadari Williams, similar question. What called you into the work of this environmental and social justice as a form of pastoral care? So many preachers and pastors, they do this work without these components of the environment and social justice. But what called you into this work to ensure that there's an inclusion of these dynamics?
First, I want to thank you all for having the opportunity to be here with you. And to Sister Smith, I'm born and raised in New Jersey, so thank you for representing New Jersey. The ancestors called me into this work. And I firmly believe in blood memory and housing that memory in my body. It has been awakened. It was awakened long before I knew it. My life was set on this trajectory by my first experiences in the garden with my mother, who, after a very powerful mental rupture, found soul care in the soil. She returned to the practices of her grandfather, who taught her the power of gardening and the earth as a child. And in her recovery from severe depression, I saw the work that her hands did in that soil and what that soil did for her soul. But I was called into this work through the wounds of my people and the land. As a liberationist, pastor, and psychologist, I came to see that the trauma of environmental degradation in Black communities is not incidental. It's systemic and it's spiritual. In my studies that I'm engaged in indigenous and eco psychologies, they teach that the earth is not just a resource, but it's a relative. And we have always known that. And this disconnection from our relative, this disconnection from the land, especially in communities shaped by displacement and extraction, it has psychological and theological cost. And that's part of the work that I'm engaged in when it comes to pastoral care, because pastoral care then must include the healing from environmental trauma and empowering our people to become stewards of the sacred soil. So for me, environmental justice is soul care. It's soul care at its depths, and it's about returning to our rightful relationship with creation and with one another in this universe, pluriverse that we all exist in.
When you say your ancestors, it made me take aback. Something as simple yet powerful, as far as how this trajectory happened, and then this dynamic of resource and relative, all ways of framing this interconnectedness. The way I phrased the question almost segmented the things, and your answer showed that there's no segmentation. It all is resource and relative. It all is ancestors calling us back to the ground and to the earth and to those things that we need. And I don't know if we ever looked at it like that. We need those relationships with land and with earth and with air. And so I'm just ecstatic about your work and everyone's work as we delve in this in a way that's not as only practical, but this way that is a part of our being. It's just is a part of who we are, and it's a part of our being. One of the questions that I wanted to, ask as we talk about this dynamic of it being a part of our being and us being people of faith and believers in God and being believers that we are created in God's image. There's a question that says, how do we reconcile the Imago Dei? The image of God. How do we recognize or reconcile the Imago Dei that all people are made in God's image with this ecological degradation that is disproportionately happening amongst Black and Brown people and poor communities? How do we fan the flame, and how do we, make acknowledgement of what's going on and how divisive things are when it comes to our land, and the fact that all air isn't equal. Anybody is welcome to kind of speak on that at this time.
I'll just say environmental racism is a real thing.
Yeah.
It, we're being attacked in so many ways, and it's definitely on purpose that our communities are considered sacrifice zones.
Mm-hmm.
It's on purpose that the power plants and the petrochemical plants and the landfills and the incinerators are in our neighborhoods. There's definitely no accident there. It's not like, oh, coincidence. It's on purpose. And God definitely created us in his image, all equal, but man has treated us very differently over time. In this country especially. I mean, the way we were brought here, and enslaved, and and then even throughout the Jim Crow era, and um, now we have more freedom, it feels like, but in this current administration is trying to take us back to the what did he call it, make America great again. Like, I guess it was great when we had less less liberty and freedom, we were less equal, and they're already winning in the fact that they could that we don't have clean water, and we're not breathing clean air. Like right here in Jersey, we have this power plant, and my little sister's special needs, and she goes to a program, and it's about two different stops on the turnpike have these power plants, and my little sister, bless her heart, is already special needs. Now she has a lung disease because of the pollution in the air that she's has to be in, because her program is there. So she's everywhere she is this
Right.
toxins. So that they're doing it on purpose to our community. So yeah, we have been created. We have to. I don't know how to change those hearts. Though we've been trying to change those hearts for hundreds of years. That's a tough one, because now they're in power again, and they are
Right.
trying to take us even back further than how we've gotten now. But that's the fight.
Right.
That is the fight, to remind people that we are all created equal, that we are all God's creation, that we all deserve and we all have rights, a civil right to clean air and clean water. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thank you for calling it out, and speaking it, as we have this dynamic of conversation, speaking about what is, and then as individuals of faith. One of the things as we talk about the is this dynamic of environmental injustices and how it affects a lot of people of color. What does a Black theology of sustainability look like? We think of Black liberation theology, and we think of it being something that, or being a theology form that liberates an individual, not just when we get to heaven, but in this day and age. And so as we think and talk as a brain trust actually on this call, what does a Black theology of sustainability look like? And how could it, differ from, mainstream white denomination, in lieu of what was just said about how the injustices affect people of color more gravely? So yeah.
I think a part of that is kind of what we do in this hour. Um, I I saw something yesterday uh, uh, the person who now sits in the executive mansion was having a answering questions, and there was a gentleman there from India who started to ask his question, and the president was like, "I don't understand what he's saying. Nah, it just doesn't sound good to me the way he's talking. Let me hear from someone else." So right there, uh, uh, the leader of the country continues to decide who's worthy of being accepted and who's not. And the problem is he's got a lot of people who are saying amen. So that it's not just him, it's the hearts that believe in this caste system. And so, what do we do at a time like this? And I'm thinking, pleased to be able to travel with Dr. Williams later on this year. And it seems that there are things that we need to do in the Black diaspora together that is positive, right? That part of it is in this time really getting to know one another. Yeah, and I was wondering, Doctor, say something about that.
Yeah, and I would also add to that the sustainability starts with a survival that moves towards sovereignty. I think we have to start thinking in our communities about making sure that we are not only doing the things that are considered environmentally safe now, like recycling, but we have to be resisting, and in our resistance we need to be setting up systems of sovereignty that work for us. Brother Carroll mentioned a trip that he's traveling with me to Ghana, but that trip was started as a way of introducing our people to the diaspora, number one, but also to opportunities to see themselves outside of America, and how we could exist outside of America, how we could thrive and survive outside of where we currently are. So for me, survival is important, but also sovereignty. And we don't necessarily have to do that by traveling out of the country. We can do that in the areas in which we are. We can start to develop systems where we are dependent upon one another, not so much dependent upon systems that don't have our best interests in mind. And then we have to critique those systems too. Dr. Carroll talked about what we need to be doing in this season. We need to be critiquing the environmental racism that Sister Smith raises, and we need to be talking about the ways in which racism is impacting us, in many ways, and start to reclaim the sacredness of Black spaces and bodies in various places. We're all seeing the impacts of gentrification. We're seeing the impacts of our communities changing. And we have to start reclaiming some of that and recreating that. I love what I'm seeing happening in Tulsa. I'm not into particular details about it, but that's an example. And that's happening in various pockets around the country that brings me life and energy, but more on a more powerful and larger scale. I think Black folks need to start considering, people of color need to start considering sovereignty and developing systems that work for us.
Wow. Others. Yeah. Other thoughts?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I had some background noise. If I start with Reverend Carroll's notion of the Imago Dei, the first thing that always comes to my mind is my math background. So that if we're in the image of God, then the pre-image is what God is. And if we're all in the image of God, then it takes all of us to make up what that pre-image of God is. And that then causes me to flip the script, as it were. And many know that the full gospel movement started pretty much with Paul Morton in New Orleans. And I had somebody ask me to write a polemic against the full gospel movement. And I said, well, what am I supposed to write?
Mhm.
And when they were really pressing, I said, well, our problem is that we're whole gospel, the whole gospel for the whole person, the whole community, the
Mhm.
whole counsel of God. And when you approach it that way, and then juxtapose that with what humanity has done in the aberration of what the imago Dei or who we are, post-traumatic slave syndrome has us reeling from the process, and that is about a 5-step process. But the two steps that are the real pieces are this thingification. You take humanity, the imago Dei, make a thing out of it. Once you have a
Mhm.
thing, then you can commoditize it. And we come
Mhm.
right back to the perennial problem that it is not money, but it is the love of money that is
Mm,
of all kinds of evil,
Yeah.
which is what we had to do in the New Orleans area with the river parishes. We didn't know what we were doing when we were coming up against Cargill, a multinational, international kind of thing that was polluting everybody and
Mhm.
everything. The river parishes are understood as Cancer Alley.
Mhm.
Um, just like Love Canal up in upstate New York, I'd be with the toxic dumps. But we have lost, when I was there, we lost whole families to cancer.
Yeah.
And then there
right,
was double whammy
right.
of both New Orleans and now Oakland, where they want to store coal out in the open.
That's
So
right.
you dug all this stuff out of the earth, and then you want to put it in the places where the people are least able to resist its impact and its effect.
That's
And they
right.
get black lung disease, and they've never dug a spade full of coal in their life.
Right.
So this
Mhm.
commodification seems to continue. And if you watch number 45, 47, he's talking about taking off the restrictions against drilling and this, that, and the other that have been protecting the environment. And why? Because there's money in it. When you commoditize anything, anybody, this is the problem we get. So I say let's flip the strip. Name it, claim it, call it, and haul it. If that's full gospel, then let's go for the whole gospel.
The whole gospel.
Let's advocate for that which will help the whole person,
Right.
Holistic.
internally, externally. Remember again what King said in I think it's Stride Toward Freedom. You can't just save the soul. We got to deal with the conditions. He
Yes,
says,
sir.
damn them, and so that the soul will have a chance when
Yeah.
it's saved. So
Yeah. Yeah.
there's enough room for everybody to find a little peace. You don't have to have my ideology. You don't have to have my theology.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
You know, I don't even call myself so much a liberation theologian. I'm a freedom theologian.
Okay.
Mm,
Okay.
And freedom requires something else. Liberation is a state. Freedom, you have to have freedom to, freedom from, freedom with. And that this is not against liberation because it's semantics. It's semantics.
Okay. Okay.
But the real life thing is people are dying.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
And the planet is in the balance. Science fiction movies that are popular are really popular because they're presenting alternatives to what happens when we have depleted the resources of the earth.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if people think that that's far fetched, let's just look at England and, and why it had to come across the Atlantic.
Come on, Doc.
Down all the trees, it had messed up all the environment. There was
Right.
nothing left there.
Yeah.
Potato family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the potato famine, the Irish. So they then had to go and discover somebody who was already there and who Africans millennia before had already interacted with. How do we know?
Talk,
In the hieroglyphics there, whether it's Peru, Colombia,
talk.
Ecuador,
Yeah.
That's right.
the Olmec civilization. So So this notion of
Been
this
there.
manifest destiny, this rugged individualism, and I claim you in the name of whatever, so I can make money off.
Mm, mm.
Ooh, somebody told a lie one day.
Yeah, yeah.
Chris
We
gonna
we
find Ray Charles. That's what I like. I don't care much for Flip Wilson, but he's got a point when he said Christopher Columbus. Chris gonna find Ray Charles.
He said,
That's cool. So one of the things that's beautiful is this conversation that we're having, and some of the words that have been shared: sustainability, sovereignty, resistance, a system of sovereignty. Some of the words and the language and the resolve. But then I do have the question, because we on this call, there are definitely scholars, but there are people in practical ministry as pastors, as people in community. What does those things look like? Either if you can share something that you yourself are working on that is implication or is an illustration of resistance, or something that looks like sovereignty. Let's break it down. And if there's some examples of actually these words in practice that you can share with the audience, either something you yourself are doing or something that you know of someone else, as far as making these words come to light in practice.
Well, I love the sovereignty piece. First of all, I also hate that I didn't get to go to Ghana during the year of return. I've never been to Africa. I'm 69% West African, so I definitely need to make my way there.
well, there's still room. Come
Right.
on.
We got,
Okay. All right. Well, all right.
we got room for you.
We will talk about that. Okay. Good to know. But yeah, I actually I appreciate the let's not worry about changing their hearts and let's just do our own thing. Let's unite and do our own thing. I love that. What I'm doing is I am focused on trying to change hearts, but really not their hearts. My focus is trying to change our hearts, like people of color, people of faith who should understand. They just don't know. They don't know that the pollution in their neighborhoods is what's causing climate change and is fully connected. They don't realize, in church, because I've had pastors say, because a lot of the work we do is in churches. We go to churches and I do like a gospel concert, and in between the songs, I'll talk about how profits are more important than people and how the pollution that's in our neighborhoods is giving us cancer and asthma. I talk about Cancer Alley because I've been there like 5 times, and Freeport, Texas, and all of these places and my best friend died of breast cancer in Oakland, another cancer cluster, these cancer clusters all over the country, and they're our communities. And so that's what I'm explaining to people, because people of faith, we need God's help. So we need people of faith to be the people that are actually the ones that people are in this movement are following. Like, we are all leaders in the movement, but we need to be the forefront. We need to be the ones where the whole movement is saying, okay, guys, what should we do next? What's the move? And so far it's not been like that, not for people of color or for people of faith. And we are the ones that I think the reason why the movement has not been winning, I think, is because we're not the ones that they're taking the next, moves from. But I think once people understand what's happening, they've been very responsive to want to know what we do next. And I have, though, unfortunately, run into a few pastors that said our job is that's not our job is just people's spiritual self, just the spiritual part of people is all my job is. And this other stuff that you're talking about, that's not really what we're supposed to be focused on. And that's not been everybody, but I've definitely run into that, and it's unfortunate. So those are the hearts that I'm not focused on the racism hearts. I'm focused on the people who are suffering, the people who are dying from the pollution that's causing climate change. I'm focused on those hearts because they just don't understand what they're in. They don't understand the attack that they're under. And so I can change those hearts with some music, with some, because music opens hearts in a way that nothing else can. So we start with the music, and then Rev Yearwood, who is my amazing co-founder, when we do a climate revival, it's me singing and speaking a little bit, and then he closes with a sermonette or some kind of speech. And honestly, it's been helpful. But our community, our faith community, our people of color community, do need our hearts changed because we do not understand that this environmental aspect is another version of the attack that we know we've been under for a very long time. So that's what that's how I'm going about climate revival. Me and Rev, that's how we're going about the change. I'm not poverty. I just think our communities just come together and have our own stuff. Because everything we need, God, that's another thing I learned in the woods. God gave us everything we need, right? It's on earth. We don't, we have everything we need. So if we came together and decided that our dollar should stay in our community and all of those type of things, I love it. I'm with it.
Gotcha, gotcha. Reverend Hadari, what does resistance look like? I understand the dynamic of learning where we come from, but break it down a little more as far as what that looks like.
Yes. So resistance for me, it looks like number one, recognizing the ways in which we've been colonized,
Okay.
and how that colonization resides within our being and in our psyches. Much of my work is decolonial work in the sense that some of us have been so colonized that uh, we continue to perpetuate the harms of the systems that impacted us. We now live that out as the perpetrators. And that happens in some of our churches. The sister just spoke about some of the pastors who don't see themselves as those kinds of leaders. That is the continuation of the colonization of Black folks. So for me, resistance is ancestral memory. It's returning to understanding the power that our people possessed through ritual, through engagement with the land. One of the things that learned in being in Black Christian spaces, I'm Presbyterian now, but I was born Baptist and raised Church of God in Christ, and my grandmother was a member of the Nation of Islam. So I come with all that
Hallelujah. You come all of it down.
background. But what I've come to learn is that in our
I'm sorry, can
separation from our
everyone else mute out in the background.
what I've come to learn is that the intentional separation from our ancestral lineage and rituals and power have led to our disconnection from the land. There is history that records many tribes in Africa, some of the Bantu tribes who named herbs and trees after various body parts, so that you would know that if you went to that particular tree or that particular plant, it was good for the stomach, or it was good for the lungs, or whatever the case may be. All those disconnections have created in our people this sort of divide and schism that we don't see ourselves as part of the earth. So we do rituals. We in our grief rituals, we get down in the soil. We engage our African heritage. We marry our African traditions and rituals with our Christian faith and belief, because the two can exist, even though some people say they don't. And we understand that this Christianity in which we believe and profess, well, the term Christianity we use, this faith tradition births out of our African heritage. So in addition to that, we return to many of the ways of our people. We engage in the creation of food. We grow food. We share that food with one another. I am now almost going on a year and a half of surviving cancer, and my cancer survival has been as a result of my diet change. Now, I don't push everybody to become a complete vegan, but I know what this vegan lifestyle has done for my body and for my health. So we have started on first Sundays. I'm introducing a Black Southern congregation on Old National Highway down the street from Big Daddy's restaurant, where they serve smothered pork chops and everything else. I'm introducing them to vegan food. And my elders, one of the first things that was said by the community of folk who came, where they were surprised at how the elders leaned into this way of being. So that's, that's part of it. And from the environmental aspect, we're trying to do things on our property and our land to show our people that we're not new to this. We have always been environmentally conscious. Um, they brought us here because of our gifts with the environment. We had skills that they needed. And we just have to tap back into those skills. So we're doing some things. We're resurfacing our parking lot, creating some smart services to bring down the heating in the urban communities. We've invested in other solar opportunities, but all of that is education and unlearning, and doing what traditionally has been told to us the church doesn't do. For me, that's resistance.
Thank you. Thank you. Powerful examples of what it actually looks like. And as we one last question, Dr. Webster or Pastor Ben, how can churches, particularly Black churches, become resilient hubs? We've kind of heard that dynamic from Reverend Hadari and this dynamic of citizens and what's going on at his place of worship. But to the two of you also, how can churches, particularly Black churches, become resilient hubs, moral beacons, and models of sustainable practices in their communities?
Yeah, I want to go back to Sister Smith because, again, you have to pardon my culturism. I resonate to Pogo, the cartoon strip. We have met the enemy, and it is us. And far too often, in New Orleans, my fight was really against all that externality that I was talking about. In the Bay Area, my fight is internal because, as Reverend Dr. Hadari says, this this notion of he calls it decolonization, which is what it is, and I'm from the era where that's internalized oppression. So I have a recurring sermon: envy not the oppressor, and choose none of their ways. But we seem to envy the one who is oppressing and has their foot on our neck. And we replicate over and over their methodologies and we perpetrate it upon each other. And so the problem for me is a matter, if I may be so bold as to go, the root matter is self-love. We do not love ourselves enough to do right by ourselves. And because we don't love ourselves enough, how can we say that we are going to carry out the commandment to love our neighbor as we love ourselves and we care nothing for ourselves? We drink the Kool-Aid and we buy into the oppression, the colonization, and we perpetuate and perpetrate and put that off on one another. One of the things Beth Eden is doing now, we're blessed to have a young man who I've known for over 40 years. He's starting what he calls Begin, and that's Beth Eden Green Initiative. He's going to be working with Dr. Carroll as he's working on his doctorate of ministry and, doing these kinds of things, that all of the stuff that you were here. The last thing I'll say quickly, because I know time is of an essence, is what Dr. Carroll and again, Dr. Hadari are doing. The thing we found out when we first started traveling to Africa was there's a historical piece. When we got there, folks said, "What took you so long? We've been waiting for you." And we didn't have an answer. So we had to go back to the whole mission notion of how people of color were the homeland. And then when they were allowed to go back, the powers that be did everything they could to poison the pill that they were taking and saying, "Well, we're gonna come and civilize you heathens," and the civilization was what they found when they went there. That's the first. The second piece is when African continentals, I'll put it that way, come to this country, they're poisoned against African Americans. Now, the one thing you want to do is stay out of Southeast white folk are concentrated and are true enough, show enough. Stay out of Camden. Let me go to Jersey, and Newark. That they are poisoned against their own people and saying, no, here's the two things this country does. If you're erotic and exotic, the dominant culture elevates you above the indigenous folk. And so African Americans have been kept separate from Africans deliberately.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And what we're finding out is those who have gone to West Africa, Durban, Johannesburg, not so much Cape, because that's still under white control. But the expats that leave here say, I can do business without the hostility. Want us to link up. And the last thing they want is for us to unite.
Yeah, that's a word. That is definitely a word. Definitely. Come down.
I'm sorry. I just artist who bought land in Kenya and is engaged in farming. A lot of people don't know that Jack, they are doing powerful work. So they're prime examples of us who have
well, we're pleased to announce today we've just started Green the Church Kenya, and so we're branching out and trying to ensure that the quote unquote church perspective. I always tell people I am Baptist born, Baptist bred, Baptist till I'm dead, but I am not German.
One word of encouragement, one word of offer to those that are listening now and that will listen, because this will get replayed on various platforms from various individuals. One word of encouragement, our prophetic charge you offer to those who are listening. I'm going to start with Pastor Ben.
I do have one, and I've been listening. Like I feel like the little kid in the back trying to leave the house. He was visiting with his dad, and I said, "Listen, tell me the work you do." And he talked about blasting and going down in holes, and he used this word, damage. We hurt the earth. He says, but what science, education, and knowledge.
The race is on.